Welcome, everyone. I'm Barbara Coffey, Director of Economic Initiatives for the City of Tucson. Thanks for joining this afternoon. Today, we are pleased to have a well-rounded panel of individuals uniquely positioned to inform and assist you with all things business lending and financial support. So definitely today, we'll take your questions. I know you'll have them. We'll do that as we go, and feel free to enter those in the chat box or the Q&A function, and we'll get to as many of those as possible in our time together. We will keep all participants muted since we do have a large number of attendees, but we'll record the session and make it available for everyone as of tomorrow. And remember, you can find links to all previous webinars at connecttucson.com. So let's get started. First up, Brian Quijada. Brian Quijada recently joined the Small Business Administration, serving as an outreach and marketing specialist in Tucson. He came to the SBA after serving as the Director of Rural Economic Development at Community Investment Corporation, where he collaborated with key community organizations to provide financing and educational tools to entrepreneurs in rural southern Arizona. Additionally, Brian spent 15 years in banking and financial services, specializing first in mortgage lending, followed by small business banking with Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and Vantage West Credit Union. With that, we'll start with Brian. I'll turn it over to you with all the big news from the federal government. Brian.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I am going to get my PowerPoint up here for you all. Okay, well, again, thank you for joining us today. I will be covering SBA's available COVID-19 economic aid funding options that are available both in the form of a grant or a loan. So let's go ahead and get started with PPP, which is one of the hot items, and which is soon to expire at the end of the month. So it's time is of the essence for those interested parties here. So Payment Protection Program, otherwise known as PPP. This is a product that became available through the CARES Act last March, and it was available through August. With the Economic Aid Act that was implemented in late December, a second round of PPP became available. Now, it is a loan. You will sign a loan agreement. However, it does have a forgivable option if used appropriately. So the thing about this is you must use it, as the name indicates, for payment for payroll, 60% minimum for payroll, and then the rest can be used for eligible expenses, which include rent, mortgage, or commercial loan interest, utilities, operating costs, property damage costs if for civil unrest and things of that nature, if your business was affected by it, supplier costs, etc. Now, the second wave of PPP is available for those that did not receive the first draw back in or up until August. It does include availability for additional entities. Covered eligible expenses have been expanded. The borrower is able to select their covered period between 8 to 24 weeks. That way you can make adjusted to your needs. The business must have been in operation since February 15th of last year of 2020. And again, March 31st is the deadline to apply. So apply as soon as possible for this program. So first and foremost, what is eligible for a PPP? Well, there has been some expansion on this. Now it's eligible for housing co-ops, destination marketing organizations, certain 501c6 organizations such as chambers of commerce are available, and eligible news organizations. With news organizations, they would be under the NAICS code of 5151 or 51110 that would become available for that. But any questions, just feel free to contact the SBA or your lender on that. Still eligible are the sole proprietors, independent contractors, self-employed individuals, your traditional partnerships, corporations, LLCs, 501c3 nonprofit organizations, 501c19 veterans organizations, and tribal organizations. Now, a second feature with the Economic Aid Act is the second draw PPP loan. This is available for those who have received an initial PPP loan, but with some additional eligibility requirements. Number one, you can have more than 300 employees, and you must have suffered at least a 25% reduction in your gross receipts. The loan calculations will be determined for almost everyone at 2.5 times your average monthly payroll for 2019 or 2020, with a max amount of $2 million for your loan. If your business falls under the accommodation and food services sector under NAICS Code 72, then your average payroll would be 3.5 times the monthly amount for 2019 or 2020, also up to $2 million. The loan applications have been updated and are available through your lenders, also through the SBA website. So for second draw, it would be 2483-SD for second draw. So it's very important to know that. Okay, some interesting, oops, I'm sorry, I skipped one here. Additionally, you must, in addition to when you're obtaining a second draw, you must ensure that your covered periods do not overlap with your first draw. This is if you received a first draw in January of this year. The time frame is very tight right now, so there's no way anyone can come across this currently, but you must make sure that your coverage periods do not overlap one another, cannot exceed the 300 employees, and of course, the 25% reduction in gross receipts is important there. Okay, an exciting change did occur a couple of weeks ago on February 24th and became effective on the 3rd of March. With the new stimulus package, Schedule C filers are now able to utilize gross income from their Schedule C to qualify or to determine their loan amount. Previously, it would be line 31 for net income. That was used to calculate loan amounts. Now it's based off of gross. So line 7, those applications have been changed and updated. They are available on the SBA website. If it's a first draw, it is form 2483-C. If it's second draw, 2483-SD. So please download those if you are a Schedule C filer looking to obtain your PPP. Now, as I mentioned, there is a a forgiveness feature to this. But before we go into maturity, if any part of your loan is not forgiven, there is a term that is applied to it. It's a fixed rate of 1%. No collateral or a personal guarantee will be required. There are no fees or prepayment penalties. A 5-year maturity is most likely given. If your PPP was received prior to June 5th of 2020, it is 2 years, but you can work with your lender about extending it to 5 years. The payments will start 10 months after your covered period, whether or not you applied for forgiveness. Okay. Also, some updates that came through the Economic Aid Act. Idle advances are no longer deducted from your loan forgiveness payment. So the idle advance, which I'm going to touch on in just momentarily, but the Economic Injury Disaster Loan was another loan product offered through the CARES Act that came with a grant feature up to $10,000. Essentially, you were given $1,000 per employee up to 10. So that amount was deducted initially from your PPP forgiveness, which at some point, at least $10,000 would have been a loan. That has now been removed. So the advance is no longer part of your forgiveness. You do not have to worry about repaying the advance. This is a tax question for your tax professional, but expenses paid with your PPP loan funds are tax deductible. There is now a new simplified loan forgiveness application for loans under $150,000. And again, loans are not federally the forgivable portion is not federally taxable income. So just FYI for your tax preparation professional. Okay, that wraps up PPP. Now we're going to discuss the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. This program has been extended through the end of December of this year. So it is a loan that will provide working capital relief to small businesses. You can utilize this in conjunction with your PPP. However, you cannot double dip or overlap your expenses. So best is to utilize your PPP during your covered period. And if you obtain an idle loan, utilize those fundings after your covered period. But use of proceeds, again, working capital, payroll, healthcare benefits, rent, utilities, etc. Terms are 30-year term, a fixed interest rate of 3.75 for businesses. For for-profit entities, nonprofits are at 2.75. There is no prepayment penalty. There are no fees except for a $100 UCC lien collateral filing fee for loans over $25,000. Okay. Other than that, there is no fees associated with this loan. All qualified small businesses, co-ops, and agricultural enterprises and nonprofit organizations are eligible for this loan. Again, please visit sba.gov to apply for this. Is directly through the Office of Disaster Assistance, and this program is open through the end of the year. Okay, the Targeted Idle Advance. This is a grant option that is available. So just to give you a quick background, as I mentioned, you did have an opportunity to receive up to $10,000 under idle initially through the end of July of last year. The Target Idle Advance is looking to balance out those previous advances to the full $10,000. However, the business has to meet 3 sets of criteria. Number 1, be in a low-income community, suffer greater than 30% economic loss, and have 300 or fewer employees. There is nothing that the borrower must do to apply for this. If you qualify under those 3 sets of criteria, SBA will email you directly to submit your documentation for this. One thing to note is that, or perhaps have this information handy, is you will need to provide your 2019 federal tax return, the EIN or social security number that was used for your original application. I can't stress this enough. If there was any change in your business between last year and now, whether you switched from a sole proprietor to an LLC, perhaps went from using a social to a tax ID number, you must utilize the information that was used in your original idle application, or else it could further delay the processing of your file. However, once you provide all your documentation and you meet the eligibility criteria, SBA will then provide you a document known as the 4506T, which is utilized to obtain your tax transcripts. SBA does have a goal to have these funded within 21 days. So please, again, just ensure that you provide all information, all the correct information that you used with your original application, provide accurate banking documentation. Please ensure that your bank account matches your business. A lot of folks are tried utilizing their personal bank accounts, and that will cause a delay and perhaps even a decline in your application for this. So again, just ensure that everything matches to your business. Okay, and then lastly here we have the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant that is becoming available. It is not yet open, but for those that may qualify, you are encouraged to apply with sam.gov in order to apply for this. Now, eligible entities include live venue operators or promoters, theatrical producers, performing arts organizations, or motion picture theater operators, certain museums, zoos, aquariums that meet certain criteria, town representatives, and so forth. You must have been in operation as of February 29th of 2020. And please forgive that final bullet point. This was a slide deck that was provided from headquarters, so I could not make any edits, but that you will be able to obtain both PPP and a Shuttered Venue grant, which I'm about to discuss in the following slide here. So an update was just released this past Friday. The application portal will open on April 8th. Prior to the official opening of the application, SBA headquarters is hosting a national informational webinar to highlight the application process and for potential eligible entities. That'll be on Tuesday, March 30th from 2:30 to 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. The website at the bottom, sba.gov/SVO grant, you'll find all the details for anything regarding this grant. As I mentioned, in order to prepare for the opening, you're encouraged to register with sam.gov, which is a system for award management, and also reference the preliminary checklist, application checklist that is available on the SVO grant website. Additionally, as I mentioned, prior to the recent stimulus package, the American Rescue Plan Act, a potential shuttered venue grant entity would not have been able to obtain a PPP in addition to the grant. That restriction was recently lifted. However, your PPP must be fully funded before you can obtain the grant. If not, then the grant becomes the PPP would become ineligible. So please ensure that your PPP is completed prior to obtaining the grant. Again, all this information can be found at www.sba.gov/SVO grant.
That's awesome.
Just highlight my local resources here. So the Small Business Development Center, SCORE, the Women's Business Center, and the Veterans Business Outreach Center can be of assistance to all small businesses, whether it's for COVID relief options or general SBA lending. And please stay connected through us through updates. Or you can receive email updates from headquarters or follow us on Twitter. And here's my contact info for any additional questions.
That's great. Thank you so much, Brian. It's interesting. Well, I already learned a few tips and tricks. I'm sure others did too, that you shared in just those comments. It's just, it points out the information is so important, and the nuances of filling out these applications are important so that you can get it done right the first time. Brian, just real quickly, can you share, how, between the role that you play with the SBA and the work with the resource partners, and some of those we're about to hear from, how does your role work, and what's the division of responsibilities, and in terms of our businesses, at what point do they contact you? At what point do they go to someone else? What do you say about that?
Well, we are here to always answer those questions. The resource partners that I mentioned, they are an instrumental tool in the community to help small businesses, whether they are starting out or in operation. They are there to assist in many ways. So we can always field the questions, and if they are better suited for a resource partner or even one of our lending partners, that's when we make that determination and direct them to the appropriate channel for them.
Awesome. And Jill did have a question. Any information on the Restaurants Act? And I think she might be referring to what I also saw, something referred to as the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Do you have any information on that?
No information has been made available yet to us. Once it does become available, I'll be sure I can forward it to you, Barbara, and send it over to the network as well. But or she can contact me directly, and I can add her to my distribution list for that as well.
Awesome. All right, we'll do that, and I'll keep looking as well as we move forward. So I'll introduce next Gary Melenda, President of Business Development Finance Corporation, an organization consistently ranked as Arizona's #1 SBA 504 loan provider. Gary joined the nonprofit we call BDFC in 1987 as Community Development Group Manager and has served as president since 1993. Gary has oversight of BDFC's Community Development Group, whose clients include the City of Tucson Industrial Development Authority and the nonprofit Community Finance Corporation. Prior to joining BDFC, Gary worked for a Tucson commercial real estate developer, J&C Companies, and before that, a national architectural firm, Anderson DeBartolo Penn, specializing in healthcare and high tech. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our lending partner, Gary Melenda.
Well, thank you very much. Brian, you did a great job hitting the highlights on the PPP. I had a question for you, though. Do you have any information as to the possibility of the program being extended?
None of us as of yet, Gary. I know it's in talks, but nothing has been legislated for it. So at this point, we just cross our fingers to see if it does happen.
Okay. And would that require legislation, most likely?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's we have a short window and a possibility. I suppose there could be a gap potentially, and the program could restart.
Potential, yeah. I mean, we haven't been given any other information, but I've read on the news that it's something that has been proposed, but nothing that's gone to the floor yet.
Okay, great. I was just curious if you had any insight. Well, just to get a sense of the program, the legislation created a total funding of about 7.25 billion nationally. And I know SBA has data for those that are interested. You can see how is Arizona doing in terms of accessing that capital. And from our standpoint as a lender based in Tucson, also serving Phoenix and the rest of the state, it's a little different. The pace of the demand side of things is a little more measured. Still strong, but a little not quite the land rush like a year ago, where it seems hard to remember in some ways, and it seems like yesterday, but we were literally in the unknown as far as the impact of the pandemic, and tremendous demand for PPP, and a lot of competition for the funds, and a lot of quick reaction from the congressional side. And also certainly from the SBA did a great job getting information out so that the funding really got to the businesses. And as Brian indicated, there's some definite enhancements, improvements in the program. To be eligible for the second draw, having that decline in top line revenues of 25% quarter over quarter or annual is a criteria. A lot of businesses can meet that. We've had a few that just aren't, are doing well and just aren't perhaps eligible for that second round. We've had questions from folks that are doing a first draw PPP. Can they get a second draw? And the answer is yes, subject to availability and probably more importantly, time. So, I would say there's definitely demand for the product, and it is forgivable, as Brian indicated, based on a submittal of information. One thing that, from a lender's perspective, and you as a borrower, that's very, very positive is the legislation significantly, and the SBA simplified the forgiveness application that the business has to fill out. It is, well, we all do our taxes. We know how much fun that is. This is similar, but I will say the new forms, people universally appreciate the energy that went into simplifying that. At a high level, there's more certifications, less small box numbers and detail. You still do have to prove that you utilize the funding for the intended purposes, at least 60% for wages. It is a job retention program at its core, and SBA and Congress kind of expanded the eligible uses of proceeds to include rent, PPE, other types of expenses that businesses are experiencing as we kind of claw our way out of the recession here. So, from our perspective, things are going pretty well. You do hear about SBA auditing a file. That is always a possibility. We have found that that is indeed happening, and it appears to be a random audit. And we've had some loans that are as small as $5,000. There's a file audit, and we don't do the real large loans. We're typically $100,000 or less. A lot of Schedule C filers, 1099 contractors are eligible. I mean, that's maybe not as widely known. If you're an independent person, you have your own business, you have multiple clients, whatever the case may be, you can get a PPP loan. So, but we have found the audits are documentation. The business is clearly required to maintain in its files. Most people, we work with them to obtain the information. We upload it to SBA, and so far we've had haven't really had any challenges where those audits determined there was any kind of problem. Are the loans really forgivable? Yes. If the business has spent the money consistent with the intended purpose, the loans have been forgivable. Brian, mentioned that the problem with the idle advances has been cleared up by the new legislation that was creating these little small $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 loans that had to be paid back. That was a big fix that Congress took care of, which was great. So from our perspective as a lender, the program has been relatively easy to administer, and we have found that the processing of the loans through the SBA portal is going very well. The turnaround time is relatively quick. SBA has put requirements on lenders that they make best efforts to fund the loans within 10 days of loan approval by SBA, which is moving. You do, when you get your loan docs, you have to turn them around, send them back, and so forth. But it does get the money in the hands of the business that need them. Brian touched on the EIDL. I won't repeat too much of that, other than there, I believe, is 15 billion available nationally, and a consistent theme of the legislation was underserved markets, minority-owned businesses. There's really a sense of reaching out to those underserved markets, which is one of the areas as a nonprofit lender, economic development lender, that we are always targeting low-income community and so forth. There's a question I saw pop up about the relief for restaurants. Nationally, this is a big number. It's 28.6 billion. So, that is 4 times as much as the PPP program. So again, this will be administered by the SBA. And as Brian indicated, again, legislation the procedures and policies are still being developed. That'll be available directly through the SBA. Shuttered venue, 15 billion. Again, nice big number. Hopefully there'll be some Tucson organizations that can take advantage of that. Always in favor of that. And they also gave some money to the SBA to help work their way through all this. And I have to say, it's been great. The speed at which SBA was able to design their systems. Again, everything's done electronically, very efficiently. Pretty impressive effort, I would say, from our perspective here in Tucson. Finally, there is an initiative called the State Small Business Credit Initiative, where there's $10 billion that's been allocated to state governments with the goal of assisting them in leveraging private capital and providing low interest loans to small business. I've seen a little bit about this at different newsletters and so forth, but honestly don't have any additional information. I don't know if anyone else on the call perhaps has been following this more closely, but again, just bottom line, more capital available for business in Arizona as we start to climb out of this with the progress on COVID-19. So Barbara, I'm going to keep it relatively short, but I'd love to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Well, let me ask you, just even thinking about the restaurant relief funding that would be available, is it too little too late? Or do you think, what do you see businesses still needing? And is this a good thing that we're going to have this opportunity going forward? I mean, where do you see the activity with businesses now, and how these programs have helped or not helped?
Well, personally, I don't think it's ever too late for a grant. So. But I'm sure a lot of businesses would agree with that. So, but I think there's been a lot of additional costs that have impacted business. I mean, Danny, what's your take on that one?
I mean, it's one of those things, Barbara. I think it is too late for some, but
yeah.
Which is unfortunate. But I'm sort of with Gary. I think the idea that there's more money available, the processes have been getting easier as were described. I think it's all a good thing. And we Gary, in our space, and we don't do SBA lending, we've actually seen an uptick in the number of loans that we're doing. We lend from $100,000 and below, and some of those ones in like the 50 to 100 range, we've actually seen an uptick recently. So the way I look at it is there's definitely demand and a need.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think about, that the first several months of the pandemic where we may have lost a few businesses, but maybe there's an opportunity to bring them back, or to with a new revised concept, see, we can start something new. So again, I think the message is clear. The government still has programs out there to assist, and we're just trying to make sure our businesses have that information. Gary, one more thing, just to get your sense from as a lender, what should the business owner be thinking about when it comes to debt, their overall debt, right? Is there a percentage of debt that's normal? Is there anything that makes you nervous when you look at how much debt a business may be carrying? What's your advice there?
Well, that's a great question. You know, in terms of we often think of real estate related debt, which, you know, a lot of businesses are tenants, right? So they are exposed to whatever rents the landlords are charging. That's another complex issue. But generally, you know, there is a cost of housing your business. A lot of times a real estate loan you can own your own building for hopefully the same cost, or in some cases even a little bit lower than it would cost you to lease. So that's an easy economic comparison a business can make. You know, after that, I think a lot of it is your personal risk preference. I mean, a lot of businesses will need revolving line of credit just to fund operations. A lot of businesses, like, you know, a restaurant, for example, are cash businesses. So they should have, they need enough money to, you know, meet vendor requirements and so forth. But generally, they don't need extensive amounts of debt. So I think it's a lot of it is your personal comfort level, your risk tolerance. If you're growing, there's always a need for capital. You know, you can only fund so much growth with internal cash flow. So again, measured, judicious use of debt facilitates growth of the business and you know, creating jobs along the way.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for that. All right, we'll keep going. Let's turn to Mark McKenna, a Tucson native. Mark has been the Southern Arizona Business Development Officer with Prestamos for 3 years. With over 25 years in retail and business banking and small business ownership, Mark has experience in management, leadership, professional consultation and development, and small business and commercial lending. Mark is currently developing Prestamos' loan portfolio in Southern Arizona, and he's always looking for more ways to deploy capital in local markets. Mark has more than 25 years experience, I said that, in financial services and also the travel industry, which is a unique combination. He is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran and loves volunteering in the community. Mark, it's all you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Barbara, and thanks for having me. Thanks to all of you that are on the call right now. I just wanted to, I want to share my screen here. I think we have the opportunity. Let me just real quickly, let's see. All right. So can you see the screen right now?
Not quite yet. Did you hit that little green button?
Yeah. Let's see. You choose a screen, right?
Yep, pick one.
Okay, here we go. Let's see, how about now?
Maybe we get your family and your pets. Oh, no, we got it. That's dumb.
You got it? All right. I just wanted to share our website, you know, just kind of go over a little bit, you know, again, about who we are and what we do out in the community, and just kind of talk a little bit about that. But real quickly here, let me just, let's see here. So just again, who we are. So Prestamos CDFI, we're part of our larger organization, which is Chicanos por la Causa. We've been in the community for over 50 years now, and in the 80s saw a need to support small businesses in our community. So hence the creation of Prestamos CDFI. But we are, you know, our focus is, you know, providing and really finding opportunity for high quality lending programs, and kind of seeking out emerging businesses, startups, businesses that are challenged. And we really want to act as a conduit and as a bridge per se, from startup businesses to their retail banking partners, you know, and we feel that there is a gap there that we could provide lending for. You know, so we do on our site, you know, you'll see various programs, you know, that we offer, but on a borrowing need, I just want to share, some of the loan products that we offer, and SBA, loans. We are an SBA preferred lender, small business loans, and we'll loan up to $5,000 all the way up to little over 1 million, on certain projects. We also work in a new market tax credit space, and we've talked about this in the past, but that's something also for investors that are looking at, tax benefits with larger projects, over 2 million up to, 15, 20 million. Those programs are available. And when we have those new market tax credits, that's something that's also available to investors for that. But, under our programs, we have the microloan programs, and we just started an unsecured program, which will help businesses from 5 up to 15,000 unsecured. Primarily we are a collateralized lender, so we're always going to be looking for collateral for our loans in regards to the loan request, and having a certain percentage of the loan collateralized as well. But under the website again, and we revamped our site, and that's why I really wanted to share. But under these boxes here, it'll talk a lot about the programs, and here the small business loans, 50,000 to up to 1 million. We also do Community Advantage, the 7A program too. So for those businesses that are challenged with having collateral, that's something where that particular program can come into play and assist in those particular scenarios where there's a lack of collateral, and the SBA is going to guarantee 75 up to 85% of the loan, depending on the amount. But this is real extensive, and I think real easy to read and go through with regards to what are the eligibility requirements for our particular loans. And it goes down, line item by line item. It's all a bullet point. But this is something, again, in this particular, on our website too, it allows you to also do a loan calculator and kind of figure out, what a payment would be, so this is something also new to the site, and something else that I wanted to share. But again, we spent a lot of time revamping to make it really user-friendly. And I would encourage anybody to go on to the site, prestamosloans.org, and to really look at some of those different programs that we offer. Gary and Brian had already talked extensively about the PPP, but we also are involved in that program, facilitating loans for the small business community. And this also, on this particular website here, we have a very easy 3-page questionnaire that people can go through. So here's the Small Business Administration Paycheck Protection Program. And it's a very simple questionnaire that helps people guide themselves through the program, and also for qualifying and seeing if they're eligible for that. To the right of that, there's a lot of Q&As that also are part of that process, and we update it constantly in regards to questions that we're continuing to get, or challenges that we come across, and questions that we feel are real pertinent to the situation, and we put it up here on our site. But literally, were you in business on February 15th of 2020, which is a particular eligibility point, with the PPP, and making sure that you in business prior to or on by February 15th of 2020, asking if they received a previous loan. And again, Gary and Brian mentioned about the second draws and it being eligible for that as well. But it'll go through, and just clicking on to the next page, ask your personal information. And lastly, the third, it just asks business information, tax ID, when the business was formed, and then any additional owners to that. But after that, it just guides you through, you submit it. Once you submit an application for the PPP, it'll go through our back office, and it'll get assigned to an intake person and a processor to start gathering documentation for the PPP. I listed my name and personal information there also, so people can actually reach out to me directly. So I myself have been involved with, teaming up with partners in the community locally, so that also they have a point of contact. It's right now, it's just, I think what we're dealing with, and also is some of the differences from the first round to this round, and how, or what I'm seeing with some of the bigger lenders out there, going back and kind of being a little bit more stringent on how they're processing those second draw loans. A lot of times what I'm seeing is, if there's something that doesn't match identical to that first draw, some of the clients are being asked to reapply altogether, as opposed to just using that same application. So that's something that, as well, where, being localized and just having the opportunity to communicate with people one-on-one, and providing, a certain, service levels, so that way that people don't get lost in the shuffle, is something that we're trying to also prevent, going forward. But so let me just kind of, but anyway, so that's kind of just real quickly, I just wanted to share that, and just let people know also that we are, facilitating the program, and we're real proactive with really offering a personal approach to the process. And so it's, and we're, this second round, for us, we're, almost at twice the capacity as we were the first go around. So we really have identified and seen tons of need out there in the community, especially with the small businesses. And then coming back, I'm seeing personally a lot of people that, got lost, on that first go around, or kind of put to the wayside and didn't have the opportunity. So I really focus in on that as well, and make sure that, I communicate with people. And we were just at the event on Monday. I was talking to a business owner, and she owns a salon, but she has, I think, 8 stylists there that can apply as contractors, the Schedule C filers. They didn't apply the first round. And so, just that in itself, we're able to assist those people, and they know, colleagues of theirs in the industry. So we've probably gotten, just since, last Monday, about, 15, close to 20 new applications, just reaching out, and bringing those people in. And that's kind of a little bit what I'm kind of focused on going forward. But
Great.
So other than that, that's kind of really what I wanted to share, and just let people know that we're also here under that program, helping out, and please
Right.
reach out to us and see if there's anything that we can do for you. We'd be more than willing to help.
I appreciate that. And that is absolutely, it's the personal touch. And that's why we do these meetings too, so that people can meet you all and have someone that they're somewhat familiar with when they make that call about some of these difficult decisions and issues that they're dealing with. So let's keep going. I want to hear from Danny Nee, the Executive Director of Community Investment Corporation, a Tucson nonprofit that works to increase access to the economy for entrepreneurs who have historically lacked access to capital from traditional lending and investment institutions. CIC was 2020's Copper Cactus Award winner for most impactful nonprofit organization for their support of local small businesses through COVID-19. Danny and his wife also wear the hats of small business owners as founders of Single Focus Web, a web development company. One thing that actually I'm noticing, just given the last presentation, there's a lot of work for web developers right now, but as we all update ours. So Danny, take it away and share these great programs that you have going on as well right now.
Thanks so much. So I'm going to maybe shift gears a little bit from what everybody else has been talking about, and because they've done such a great job through the pandemic, helping with PPP loans, helping facilitate some of the government assistance and those loans. One thing that has happened, unfortunately, through this time is that minority business owners have lacked the access that their white counterparts have had. We've seen disparities in the way that the funding came out without intention for any reason, but the reality is that white applicants were twice as successful with their PPP loan applications as Black applicants were. 60% of white business owners who applied received it, 29% of Black business owners received it. And so we do focus very explicitly, as Barbara said, on trying to get access to the economy for everyone. We don't have the resources that the government has. We're not an SBA lender, actually. We loan our own resources. We tend to work in the micro space, and one of the things that we are doing currently is we are working on a BIPOC community managed loan fund, and that's a whole lot to say. But basically, it's for Black and Indigenous people of color. And the idea of a community managed loan fund it's a very kind of different concept from traditional lending. The idea being that traditional lending, its outcomes have left a lot of people out, unfortunately. There's lots of statistics. My counterpart, Brian, who I love, he worked with us at CIC, but sometimes with the SBA lending, that's the easiest place to get data from. And from 2014 to 2019, 2.5% of all SBA's monies in their two main lending programs went to Black-owned small businesses, despite the fact that 7% of all businesses are Black-owned. And so these disparities they're problematic and they're troubling. What we're doing is we're standing up a 0% loan fund for BIPOC entrepreneurs. And the difference in the approach is that what we're saying, although we are an alternative lender and we use very traditional lending models, like many of the people on this call, but the thing that we're doing in this go around is we are turning over all of the underwriting, all the eligibility criteria, and all the loan decision making to BIPOC community members. So we have gotten a group of 7 BIPOC community members together, and they're going through the process right now of basically coming up with that criteria. What this is it actually started as my own staff's desire to do something in the wake of the George Floyd killings, to do something that was more than performative and to basically try to do something within our core competencies. They donated the first $2,700. We have leveraged that first $2,700 donation into $60,000 right now. We have a goal of getting up to $100,000 this year, and then hopefully getting that up to $300,000 the following year. It's something that we want to build on. And part of it is, quite honestly, symbolic. These are micro loans. They're probably going to be $10,000, $15,000 capped out. That's not nearly the help that we're talking about with PPP loans. And those are great loans and people should get them. And that's not the point of my being here and talking about it. But there is something symbolic about what we're doing too, which is also to call the attention to the fact that capital access is incredibly important for people, whether it's individuals and need to have access to funding for emergencies and not have to use predatory lenders, or in the case of entrepreneurs and the idea of building, having more minority entrepreneurs. There's a huge gap in terms of the population of the United States is 37% minority, yet only 15% of all private firms are owned by minorities. And there are a lot of reasons for this. One happens to be that 85% of entrepreneurs start their business with their own wealth or with the wealth of friends and family. And so we have this issue of people basically because of racist policies in the past that had to do with redlining, how people build wealth. One of the problems is that you have a system where people are back behind the starting line. We're not all starting at the same place. I think that for the most part these days that the data that's used is colorblind in terms of it's really looking at financial data, but there are some real issues with the fact if we don't come to grips with the fact that people are basically starting in a hole and trying to qualify for loans. And so that's something that we're addressing. And I think it's really important in the wake of what's happened during COVID-19. We've seen disparate impacts on communities of color. And so we're trying to do our small part. To do that, we are hoping to have our first, we'll be looking to ask for applicants coming up here probably late in this second quarter. We're looking around sometime around June. So it's something I hope that people will look out for when it comes, if you know entrepreneurs of color. Again, this is 0% revolving loan fund. There's no better money that you're going to be able to find in that case. And we're hoping again to basically make it a little easier for BIPOC entrepreneurs to either sort of start their business or to have that first set of growth that they're looking for, maybe buy a piece of equipment, something like that. So thanks so much, Barbara, for the time, and thanks to all the other panelists. I wanted to mention one thing super quickly. So many of us lenders, we depend on those who educate entrepreneurs, and we lost a giant recently. Ellen Curtin from the SBDC passed away, and I just wanted to make mention. She did amazing work, and they helped prep, the sort of business packets that we all look at, the packages, the loan packages. And her work at the Pima Community College SBDC was amazing. And I wanted to take a moment just to say we're going to miss her, and so sorry to hear about that.
Thank you for mentioning that, Danny. It's been on all of our hearts, those of us who have worked closely with her. She's been on this webinar in particular a few times over the last year, and our hearts are sad. And she has helped so many people in the community. So thank you for bringing that up. As we wrap up our time together, I did think about, maybe asking you as we look into the months ahead, and I'll throw this question open to all of you. Maybe you have a last comment. What do you think the opportunities are for the next few months as we go into the summer here in Tucson? Given that typically this summer is a slow season for us, but as we're reopening, we're vaccinating, what do you think we're going to see? What are we going to see with small businesses? What are we going to see with the lending environment? What's your outlook? Danny, do you want to say?
Our outlook is positive. I think in part because people are really looking to getting back to life. And I do think, the bad part about the sort of economic devastation that came with COVID-19, it does create opportunities. And so it is just looking at the other side of it. There are people that are, the way people are doing business is different these days. We are trying to keep up in that own way, trying to do our own creative things about trying to lend differently. But I'm relatively optimistic about what opportunities are out there. The entrepreneurial spirit is pretty hard to crush, and I really do believe in it. And I think people are going to come back, as strong as possible in the next few months.
Awesome, thank you. Mark, how about you? What do you think?
I'm with Danny. I'm pretty optimistic, about the the economic climate going forward. Of course, we have to understand there's this association right now with the health situation too, and that's what put us here to begin with. But, going back to, Danny mentioned talking about how, some of the businesses that have not made it, since the last PPP was issued, Well, we were still full blown into that pandemic and a full blown shutdown too. So a 2-month payroll, although it helped a lot of businesses, it wasn't going to get them through the year. But this go around, it's a whole different climate, and we're dealing with a whole different scenario in that things are opening up. So the businesses now have more of an opportunity to use that money and thrive on that going forward, because they're going to get more foot traffic coming now into the business to sustain themselves. So also, I'm just seeing a lot of businesses, and again, that entrepreneurial spirit where people are just figuring out how to adapt and think outside the box in this new climate, and that's just, again, instinctive, I think, a lot with a lot of the people that we deal with and the small businesses and how they evolve, through that process. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Excellent. So Gary.
I'm optimistic as well. I know there was some data recently that a panel of economists feel that the GNP growth for the country in the 2021 will be upwards of 6%, which is the highest number in 40 years. So definitely and that's a function of the perception, I think, that there's just significant progress being made with the rollout of the vaccines gaining so much momentum. And personally, I think there's a lot of pent-up demand. I think there's a lot of people are just about, ready to get out, ready to have some being able to do things with less fear, less trepidation, and higher chance of just, there'll still be changes. There'll still be things that you have to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're very optimistic and hopeful.
That's good. That's good. Brian, last thoughts.
Well, I agree with everyone on here. I too feel optimistic with the rise of vaccinations. We return to normal, so to speak, which will in turn stimulate the economy and get businesses up and running again. Of course, assuming we all use caution and so forth, but I feel optimistic that it'll start getting back to normal sooner rather than later. Awesome.
Well, that's really great. I can't thank you all enough for spending part of your day with us. There's been a lot of interested listeners. They're asking for your contact information. Make sure you put that in the chat box before you go. They all know they can contact us here at the city as well and get back in touch with us, and through connecttucson.com as well to find you. So with that, I'm going to wrap up our day together. We'll be back next month on Monday, April 26th. So mark your calendar, 3 p.m. Watch your inbox for the announcement and registration link. We'll keep you connecting for success. And don't forget, in the meantime, you can call our City of Tucson Economic Initiative Small Business Assistance Line at 520-837-4100 or visit connecttucson.com for resources to meet folks like those that have been with us today. You'll see all of their information there. Sign up for our email newsletters, and have a great afternoon, everyone. Thanks all.